Hey everybody, and welcome to our week number 3 of class. Excuse me. Admittedly, last week was a pretty rough week. Good news is you don't have any more weeks quite that intense with that amount of material to be covered. But you still have quite a few chapters per week. And as the chapters go along, they become, I'm not going to say harder or more difficult, they're just a little more involved. And so they take a little more time to get through the assignments and things like that. So, most of what we talked about in the last week is really just kind of a primer for the foundational things that we need to know to do the rest of the chapters of the book and understand what's been covered in them. So this week we're going to cover chapters 7 and 8 and 9. Now I want you to take a quick look to the next week, because on Monday, April 7th, a week from the start of this week, so that your first unit test is going to be due by 11:59 on that Monday. It covers chapters 1 through 8. And I'll send out some information later on in the week in the form of an announcement that kind of give you sort of a background and ways to prepare for that test. But just be prepared that that's getting ready to come up here pretty quickly. So let's talk about what is in chapters 7, 8, and 9. As you read chapter 6, we're concentrating on how you manage current assets within an organization. A very important activity and something that's kind of at the core of what a lot of financial analysis is. But so you want to keep in mind that current assets management involves the management of cash, marketable securities, accounts receivable, inventory, those types of things, all the current assets. And the way we go about analyzing those and financing those is different than we'll look at in later chapters, the longer term types of assets. We're going to talk about what's involved in cash management, what's involved in the management of marketable securities, detail the requirements of accounts receivable management. It ends up being a pretty important thing. Very small companies all the way to the largest corporations all leverage accounts receivable. You want to determine the level of inventory necessary to enhance sales and profitability. If you think about Walmart as an example, think about how many stores they have and how many products they have on those shelves, and they manage their inventory very, very well relative to other retail operations. And it's just amazing the amount of dollars that are tied up in that for them. And then you want to understand that the less liquid an asset is, the higher the required return that you expect to get from it. So that's looking at chapter 7. So along with managing those short-term assets, we also need to look at what our sources of short-term financing are, which again, most organizations are very reliant on that. So in chapter 8, we're going to look at trade credit from suppliers. It's normally the most available form of short-term financing, but it's something that most companies take advantage of. Some more than others, but having said that, it's an important aspect of short-term financing. Recall that you want to be able to recall that bank loans are usually short-term and should be paid off from funds from the normal operations of the firm, which sounds really great. If you're a small growing company, that may not be so easy to do, but yeah, that is a general rule of thumb. It's financially risky to do otherwise. You want to define what commercial paper is. That's something that is much more prevalent in very large organizations, and discuss how using accounts receivable and inventory as collateral for a loan, the firm may be able to borrow larger amounts. Certainly all of your current assets are leverageable for collateral to get a loan. And then talk about what hedging is and explain why it's used. So again, chapter 8 concentrates on sources of short-term financing. Now, having looked at that, the test covers us through the first three parts of the text. So not chapter 9, but chapters 1 through 8. Starting with Chapter 9, which you need to work on next week, is looking at the capital budgeting process, which is the longer-term asset view of things. And you need to be able to understand all the different topics that go with that. So we're going to start with Chapter 9, which is one of the most basic tenets, or the most basic fundamental things you need to know about finance, is the time value of money. In the time value of money, basically we have to think about the main things we want to take away are: explain the time value of money and how $1 received today is worth more than $1 received in the future. This is, like I said, this is right at the heart of most of financial analysis. Recognize that future value is based on the number of periods over which the funds are to be compounded at a given interest rate. We have tables to help us do that. We can use our calculators to do that, and we can certainly do those same problems in Excel. I think I've mentioned to several of you that using Excel is a very good practice here, because that's how most of this work is done in an organization. So it's probably a good idea to try to learn how to use that. If you don't know how to use Excel, though, don't panic. Don't think like, oh, well, I'm going to really miss out. You won't, not really, but it does make it a little bit easier. Recognize that present value is based on the current value of funds to be received. Very important concept. You want to be able to calculate yield on investment, which is the rate of return, the annuity date and payments required. Those are all corresponding kinds of calculations, and it'll make more sense when you look at it, but they're, again, very, very commonly used. And then you want to recall that compounding or discounting may take place on less than an annual basis, or such as semi-annually or monthly. Always one of those little snags that kind of gets people on test problems if you're not paying close attention to what the actual compounding period is. So anyway, things to take a look at and consider. But Chapter 9 is just, again, one of those very fundamental concepts of finance. But it won't be covered on that next test. That'll be covered on the second unit test. So don't worry about it for the test on Monday. Okay, so that's what we're going to cover this week. If you have any questions, certainly let me know. I know this is just a lot, and you're crunching through it. You're doing your best with it. You understand what to expect, so just kind of, it doesn't really let up. Maybe it'll seem easier as you go along. I don't know. Some people look at it that way, but yeah, it's we cover a lot in this class, and I've probably said that 100 times already, and I apologize for that. But I just want to kind of just keep you in the seat. You know, you got to understand that this thing's going to go pretty quickly, and don't hesitate to reach out to me if you have any questions or have any concerns. Please let me know. Okay. That best way to communicate with me, as I've said before, is through the D2L email, just because I look at that and I know it's from a student, so I can respond to that right away. All right, so don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions, and I wish you the best.